disclaimer before the video starts. This video isn't meant to make fun of anyone that likes these things, and of course it certainly isn't there to make fun of bullies. Yeah, I feel bad for anyone that got bullied by these things. Yeah, and my condolences to anyone who got bullied for liking one of these things that I'll mention in this video. Yeah, I feel bad for any one of you that got bullied. And hugs are welcome. Alright, let's start the video. Well, hello there. As we take a break from posting War Thunder stuff, I decided to cast back into the 90s and of course talk about, things that would have got you bullied in school back in the day. Alright, this is similar to one of the videos made by ThatJunkman about discussing certain things that would get you bullied in school. Yeah, certain 80's things, if I remember correctly. Or certain vintage toys. Alright, so yeah. Nowadays, bullies of course don't start fights on the playground or in school anymore. They just go on Twitter or whatever social media platform is available and usually troll at people and make fun of them for liking a certain thing or having a different opinion or something else. Yeah, don't feed the trolls, everyone. That's one thing you should learn. But back in the olden days, bullies would usually fight other kids on the playground. And of course, during recess, some kids are destined to get bullied for liking a certain thing. Yeah. Bullying was just as stupid now as it was back in the day, but it's still a thing. And these are certain 90's things that would get you bullied. Alright, so this isn't in any certain order. We're just going to talk about the things in the 90's that would have got you bullied in school if the bullies found out about them. Okay? Alright, let's go. Let's talk about them. Alright, the first thing that would have got you bullied in school, well, the first 90's related thing that would have got you bullied in school, are Legos. Now, keep in mind, this was before Legos were looked at as cool. And they would be cool back in the day, but the bullies would not like you if they found out that you were into Legos. Alright, so the reason why kids back in the olden days would get bullied if they were into Lego sets rather than the way cool or action figure lines from X-Men or whatever franchise they were into is because, well, bullies would have looked at you as nerdy and uncool. Yes, I have several Lego sets. In fact, I have a Millennium Falcon that I've yet to finish. Yeah, I have to get the parts from a Bricklink. Yeah, before Lego was even popular and before Lego was like the largest toy company in the world, Lego was just a niche thing. Well, Legos isn't actually the proper terminology for Lego sets. They're called Lego sets. So yeah, if bullies found out found out that if you were collecting Lego sets, they would have picked on you. And of course, well, this gets, let's see, 11 fists out of 20. The same rating as, say, Dungeons and Dragons, as mentioned by the ThatJunkman. Because just like Dungeons and Dragons, you can keep it a secret and you can find other friends that like Lego sets. Just as long as if you keep it a secret and talk about it in a private room, it's fine. But please don't mention it to the bullies. Because you are bound to get picked on in school every day by them. Yeah. It was hard times back in the day for Lego fans before Lego sets were even cool. Okay, let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about card games, shall we? More specifically, Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. Yeah, Pokemon was a really popular card game back in the day. And the reason why I'm putting it as, well, part of the 90's video is because it was, well, it came out in the late 90's and its popularity peaked in the late 90's and the early 2000s. Yeah. Pokemon was cool. Don't get me wrong. But if certain bullies found out that you were playing Pokemon and collected Pokemon cards, well, you would have gotten beat. Because they would have thought that you were a nerd. Yeah, I do have some Pokemon cards. Yeah, I have some Pokemon cards, and well, there's a Bianca Trainer card. I even have a case of Pokemon cards. Yeah, I do collect some Pokemon cards. Yeah, just like with the case with Lego sets. Bullies would have thought you were nerdy. The same logic applies to Magic the Gathering. Yes, Magic the Gathering is a really cool card game, and I don't have any Magic the Gathering cards, but one of my brothers was, well, a few of my brothers actually were into a Magic the Gathering, and they've collected some cards. But as with the case of Pokemon, Magic the Gathering would have got you bullied in school if the bullies found out that you liked Magic the Gathering and were collecting cards. Yeah, same logic applies to Pokemon. And both were really popular card games back in the olden days. Yeah. Some friends will want to have a conversation with you about Pokemon or Magic the Gathering. Because some people in school would have thought you were cool. Alright, so for Pokemon it gets 11 fists out of 20. But for Magic the Gathering, 10 fists out of 20. Same thing, except slightly lower fist scores. Because just like with Lego sets and Dungeons and Dragons, you could at least keep it secret. And have the bullies not find out about it, because you were talking about it in a closed space. Yeah. I feel bad for anyone that got bullied when the bullies found out they were collecting Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering cards. Yeah. Alright, let's talk about the next thing. Alright, the next thing that I wanted to talk about is, Micro Machines. Well, Micro Machines is a series of highly collectible, micro-sized cars. But just be careful not to swallow them. They're fun to play with, just not to eat, just like Play-Doh. And you would have a bad time in the hospital if you ate one. Yeah. Micro Machines are really popular back in the day. They were popular in the 80s and 90s, but in the 2000s their popularity would have been sporadic. Yeah, Micro Machines is actually kind of cool. You can collect Micro Machine. You can collect multiple cars in one pack, and that at an affordable price. You can even build your own Micro Machines Travel City and have Micro Machines Van City, and it has a lot of playsets and several collectible edition ships. So it has something for everyone. And you're highly unlikely to get bullied in school if you brought Micro Machines to show and tell. Especially when you got, like, Starship Troopers Micro Machines sets and Star Wars Micro Machines sets and even the Tick Micro Machines sets. That is if you can get a hold of them. Yeah, if you had a mint in box Star Wars Micro Machines sets, I'm sure that lots of people would have thought that you were cool and that you got yourself a true collectible Micro Machines. Yet, a few bullies would have thought you were nerdy. For this reason alone, I'm gonna give Micro Machines 4/5 out of 20. It's pretty low on the bullying chart because, well, you're not likely to get bullied while collecting Micro Machines. And if you brought collector's edition Corvettes to school and show and tell, lots of people would have thought you were cool. I mean, come on. Collector's edition Corvettes, that's awesome. Alright, so we're going to talk about another toy car, but this time uses batteries. Okay, let's go. Alright, so I'm talking about the Tyco Fast Tracks and the Hasbro XRC Pro Speed stock car. Well, I haven't split them because, well, it's basically the same case with both of them, because you would have been the coolest kid on the block if you got these RC cars. They were both the fastest RC cars that you could get in the toy store. And this was back when toy-grade RC vehicles were cool and were way faster and were fast enough to catch up to cars. Nowadays, people usually collect hobby-grade RCs like Traxxas and Tamiya and Arma or whatever brands they're into. Yeah, if you were a kid back in the day that got, well, a hobby-grade RC like a Tamiya or Traxxas, you would have been pretty cool and you would have been looked at as like a rich kid. And even the bullies would want to fight on your side. The same logic goes to the Tyco Fast Tracks and the Hasbro XRC Pro Speed Racer. And of course, if you brought them to show and tell, you would have been cool. And even the bullies want to race with you if you got yourself a Tygo Fast Tracks or a Hasbro Exerseed Pro Speed Racer. But the downside is that unlike the Fast Tracks, the Hasbro Exerseed Pro Speed Racer is not meant for off-road and is strictly a pavement-based racing car. It's a street RC car. Yeah, still a pretty cool RC car. And for this reason alone, both the Tygo Fast Tracks and a Hasbro Exerseed Pro Speed Racer, or Kenner Exerseed Pro Speed Race. Wait, it's not also made by Kenner, it's also made by Tonka. Yeah, the same company that made all these metal toy trucks also made this insanely fast stock car. Go figure. Yeah, for this reason alone, both of these RC cars get a 1 fist out of 20 on the bullying scale. Because you're highly unlikely to get bullied when you got these cars. Yeah, pretty low. Because you would be pretty cool. Alright, so let's talk about the next thing, and this is a thing that would most likely get you bullied in school. If you were even into it, let's go. Alright, the next 90s related thing that would have got you bullied in school is Sailor Moon. Yes, that's right. A girls' anime. Yeah, if girls like Sailor Moon, that's fine. You won't get bullied. But if you were a young boy that was into Sailor Moon, well, prepare to have a really bad day. And prepare to go home with bruises and teeth that got knocked out of your mouth. And my condolences to anyone that got bullied when the bullies found out they liked Sailor Moon. Yeah, if you were a young boy that was into Sailor Moon and the bullies found out, you're gonna have a really bad day. Yep. And no young boy was safe from being bullied when the bullies found out that they liked Sailor Moon. And even kids will wonder why you're not into a cooler cartoons like Batman the Animated Series, Gargoyles, or even X-Men. Heck, they'll even wonder why you're not watching another anime, Dragon Ball Z, instead of Sailor Moon. Yeah, if you were a boy that liked Dragon Ball Z, you would have been looked at as pretty cool. Because this was back when anime was starting to become popular. Yeah, and even bullies will want to play with you on the playground if you got Dragon Ball Z action figures. If you brought a Goku action figure to school, the bully would have gotten out his Frieza action figure or Vegeta action figure. Yeah, and even the bullies want to fight with you. But not with Sailor Moon, though. You would have been looked at as the odd one out. The outcast. But in Japan, it's a different story. In Japan, young boys are still likely to get bullied when the bullies found out that they liked Sailor Moon, but it's less likely to happen since, well, Sailor Moon is more and more prevalent in Japan, and at least in Japan, more young boys would be into Sailor Moon. At least you can keep it a secret. Alright, so the beatdown rating for young boys that were into Sailor Moon are, well, yeah, and this only applies to males. 15 fists out of 20. That's pretty high. But in Japan, it's 10 fists out of 20. Still pretty high in Japan, but it's lower in Japan's not as bad in Japan. Jeez. Talk about insult to injury. Liking a girl's thing. Yeah, I feel bad for anyone that got name called and called a girly girl back in the day. It's sad being an outcast. And speaking of outcast, we're gonna talk about the next thing that would have got you, next 90s related thing that would have got you bullied in school, if the bullies found out about it. Let's talk about it. It's also one of my favorite things. Yes, the next 90s thing that would have got you bullied in school is, well, Rugrats. I know, we've all been there. Yeah, if bullies found out that you were into Rugrats, they would have laughed at you. And they would have thought that you were watching some dumb kid show and a show about babies. They would have thought, ha ha, you still watching that show with babies? Well, you're uncool. But never underestimate Rugrats. It is a really great cartoon. It is a great cartoon. I used to watch it back in the day, and I still do. I still like it. It's one of the best classic Nicktoons out there, and before SpongeBob, it was the king of the Nicktoons. It had 3 movies and a spin-off series, and heck, it even had a newer series that just came out recently. Yeah, it's 3D animated. So yeah, Rugrats is pretty good, but like Dungeons and Dragons, please try to keep it a secret. 12 out of 20 fists for this one, because at least you can keep it concealed. And you can find a few friends in school that will like Rugrats as well. So, not bad. Not nearly as high as Sailor Moon, because with Sailor Moon it's a girls' anime. It's a girls' thing. Yeah. Still pretty high on the fist counter, but not as high. Next thing, we're going to talk about video games. And a really obscure console. Let's go. Alright, so this is a rather obscure and lesser known video game console, but some people still remember it. The TurboGrafx-16. Yes, very few people owned this console back in the day. And if you were one of the few people that had a TurboGrafx-16, you wouldn't be looked at as cool like you would with a Neo Geo. Because if you got a Neo Geo back in the day, even bullies would want to fight on your side, and they would want to play some rather cool arcade games. It's a really expensive system, and it's really awesome. No, this game console would, well, have you being looked at as a poor sod. Yeah, people would have looked at you as a cheapskate. Like you couldn't afford the Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo. And that you're stuck with a console that you would have rather saved your money on a SNES or Sega Genesis on. Yeah, bullies would pick on you if they found out that you got a TurboGrafx instead of a Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. And if they went home and found out that you don't have either one of the systems and you have a TurboGrafx-16, they would have picked on you, most likely. Alright, so fist counter, 12 fists out of 20. it's not high, and not as high as I would expect it to be. And speaking of Super Nintendo, that's next. Yeah. I feel bad for any Nintendo lover that got bullied by Sega fans when they got a Super Nintendo. You see, this was part of the console wars back in the 90's. The 16-bit wars were ongoing. It was the Super Nintendo versus the Sega Genesis. Yep, Nintendo's sophisticated piece of kit versus Darth Vader's 16-bit console with a Motorola 68000 series processor and a Zilog Z80 processor. Fight! Yeah, it was all about the bit wars. Yeah. James Rolfe, the guy who does the Angry Video Game Nerd videos, and of course the Cinemaster videos, explained into great detail about the bit wars. Yeah. If you were a kid back in the 90's that still had a Nintendo and didn't get a Sega Genesis, you were gonna get bullied. But if you got yourself a Super Nintendo, you were still gonna get bullied, but not as badly. Bullies would come up with every excuse in the book of why you should have gotten yourself a Sega Genesis instead of a Super Nintendo. Like, firstly, blast processing. Your Super Nintendo doesn't have blast processing, my Sega Genesis does, so you suck. Yeah, it just means that the Sega Genesis has a faster processor than the Super Nintendo. That's all it means. It's just something that Sega came up with to push as a marketing trick. That is, if that ever needs it. But the more reasonable reasons coming up next. Oh, does your Super Nintendo have a CD player? And then you would say, nah, it doesn't have a CD player. Well then, and then the bully would say, well then, you suck. You should have gotten yourself a Sega Genesis. Yeah, the Sega CD. Bullies would pick on SNES guys because their Super Nintendo doesn't have a CD player. And it's even evident in one of the commercials. You still don't own a Sega CD. What are you waiting for, Nintendo to make one? You have seen the games, right? Wrong answer, man. Show 'em. Yeah. Even the Sega felt the need to make fun of Nintendo that the SNES doesn't have a CD add-on. Well, there would be a Nintendo CD years later. The PlayStation. It was originally going to be a SNES add-on, but Sony decided that it should be its own console entirely. And I'm glad they went with the latter, since the PlayStation was one of the most, and still is one of the most popular consoles in its day. And it actually got CDs into the mainstream. And the next reason is, hey yo, is your Super Nintendo 32-bit? And then you would say, no, not really, it's still a 16-bit console. And then the boy would say, well, you should have got yourself a Sega Genesis because it has the newest and greatest and latest 32-bit add-on, the Sega 32X. And it can do all those things that the Super Nintendo can't. So you suck. Big time. Yep, that's right. The failed Sega 32X. Just another excuse for bullies to bully kids that got themselves a Super Nintendo instead of a Sega Genesis. Yeah, all this needless bickering. But the bickering didn't work out in the end, as shock of all shock. The Super Nintendo outsold the Sega Genesis, and the Super Nintendo won the 16-bit war. So, Hooray! The SNES won. And even Nintendo themselves said, well, when they saw Sega say 40 times more powerful than Super NES, they were triggered really badly. And they're like, oh no you don't. We're gonna make a game that will show that the Super Nintendo can do cool stuff too, and doesn't need all that shit either. And they did. They proved it with Donkey Kong Country. Yeah. Donkey Kong Country. And it showed that the Super Nintendo can handle rendered sprites. Yeah, it was back when pre-rendered sprites were becoming popular to show that even the 16-bit consoles can look next-gen. Yeah, so the Sega Genesis eventually lost the Bit Wars. And Nintendo was the clear victor, but in the mid-90s, Nintendo would have a new competitor, Sony, with the PlayStation, and would enter a new generation of Bit Wars, the 32-bit wars, and Sega would fall to a distant last with the Sega Saturn. It will only be on the market for 4 years in North America. Very sad, but true. Alright, so for the beatdown counter for the Super Nintendo, it's 9/5 out of 20. Reason why it was lower than the TurboGrafx 16 is because some people will think you're cool if you got SNES. And they'll actually want to play SNES games with you. Heck, the Super Nintendo is even capable of producing 3D games without the use of an add-on, as evident by Star Fox. Yeah, it's a really great game. The first Star Fox game is great, but has an H-ball. Usually most early 3D stuff has an H-ball. It's pretty slow, but Star Fox 64 improved upon Star Fox. Yeah. 9/5 out of 20 for the Super Nintendo. Not as bad as I thought it would be. And like I said, the Super Nintendo eventually ended up winning the Bit Wars. So, it all works out in the end. Alright, so we're gonna take a short break from video games and talk about movies next. Let's go. So, does any of you remember this movie? It's King. Everyone knows Batman and Robin. It's a rather infamous movie. Batman and Robin is, by no doubt, one of the worst movies ever made. But you can still find a laugh in there, but it's not very good. I wouldn't recommend you to sit for it. Yeah. Still a lot better than Battlefield Earth, which is another really bad movie. Yeah, Batman and Robin nearly killed Batman, and was also the main reason why Batman Triumphant was cancelled. Yeah, they were gonna make another Batman movie that's gonna end the Batman franchise, but that movie was cancelled. Would have had Scarecrow, played by Howard Stern. Yeah, Batman and Robin is a sad tale as well. There hasn't been another Batman live-action movie in theaters up until Batman Begins in 2005. And if you were to see this movie in theaters and talk about it in school, you would have most likely got bullied. Even normal kids would punch you, because Batman and Robin is a really bad movie. It's a shitty movie, one of the worst ever made, and no one should have the pleasure of watching it. Yes. Lots of people in school, even non-bullies, would bully you for watching Batman and Robin. Yeah, should have watched a better movie in theaters. should have saved those tickets to see, well, Air Force One instead. Yeah, for Batman and Robin, it's a pretty obvious 18 fists out of 20. That's nearly 20 fists! Yeah, my advice to you guys is don't watch Batman and Robin. It's a really bad movie, and back in the day you would have gotten bullied pretty bad if you watched it. So, don't watch it. Just watch a better movie. But at least it has good take over the world plans as opposed to Batman Forever having a really stupid take over the world plan as the Riddler tends to hypnotize people by watching TV. And it has a really simple solution. Just turn off your TV. Problem solved. Yeah, don't watch Batman and Robin. That's my main word of advice. But you can still collect it as it's a Batman movie. Yeah, all those puns and all that pain and suffering in the theater wouldn't have been worth it when you went back to school. Yeah, it's not worth the risk. Alright, so next topic we're going to talk about is sports. Yeah. A certain sports team in basketball, to be exact, since basketball is popular in the 90s. Let's go. Yeah, basketball was pretty big back in the 90s. And the team to root for in the NBA was the Chicago Bulls. Yeah, if you rooted for the Chicago Bulls, then you were the man. You were awesome. And even the bullies would like you. Yeah, the Chicago Bulls was the team of the 90s and even had some famous basketball players playing for them. But one team that, well, is destined to get you bullied if you root for them is the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets was and still is one of the worst NBA teams in history. Yeah, the Denver Nuggets have never won a single championship. At all. And if you were a poor sod that was rooting for them instead of the Chicago Bulls, then you would have gotten bullied. Even the kids who were into sports would have still picked on you, because the Chicago Bulls, I mean, not the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago Bulls are awesome. The Denver Nuggets were pretty bad, and even their team, of course, is bound, their team name is bound to make you get bullied at school. Yeah, don't drop the nuggies on this team when you're trying to do a sports bet. Because the Denver Nuggets has a 16 fists out of 20 on the beatdown scale. If you want to root for an NBA team, root for the Chicago Bulls back in the 90s. Alright, so we're gonna go back to toys. And we're definitely gonna talk about a certain popular show that was based on a Japanese live-action show. Let's go. You might be thinking, what? How can Power Rangers get you bullied? Well, Power Rangers is cool, don't get me wrong on that, but you can still occasionally get bullied if you said you like Power Rangers. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Red Ranger. Yeah, this is my Red Ranger action figure. Power Rangers was a hot toy line back then. So hot, in fact, that traffic jams were created just for the sake of getting Power Rangers toys for a kid's birthday. Yeah. Only rarely would you get bullied when you said you like Power Rangers, but it will still happen. Since, well, Power Rangers is viewed by some as cheesy. But it's still pretty cool. You get like giant monsters fighting giant robots, Megazord. And you would get the toys themselves. That's like a combiner robot that's reminiscent of Voltron and the combiners in Transformers, except, well, more reminiscent of Voltron because the components can't transform into separate robots. So yeah, some people will think you're cool. Well, a minority of people would think that you're nerdy. Alright, so what's the beatdown level for this franchise? 7/5 out of 20? Huh. I thought it would be higher. At least you can keep it a secret, I guess. But, whether if you like Power Rangers or not, you would still get bullied. Sometimes. Alright, so we're going to talk about another thing in particular, as we're going to go back to video games. Let's go. Alright, the next 90s thing that will get you bullied is, well, the next thing that would get you bullied if you were around in the 90s is Pac-Man. Pac-Man was pretty cool back in the 80s. Back when Pac-Man was first around, Pac-Man was so popular that it created a disease that's kind of like the corona of the early 80s, Pac-Man fever, and everyone got it. And the only cure is to play more Pac-Man. Yeah, Pac-Man was pretty popular back then, but over the years, Pac-Man was becoming less and less popular. And of course, games with blood and gore like Mortal Kombat were a clear sign that they were making a Pac-Man something to be laughed at. Now, to be fair, Pac-Man isn't really a 90s game, because it came out in the 80s, the early 80s. And back then, people thought you were cool while you played around with Pac-Man, but now, people would most likely bully you if you even mention Pac-Man. Which is a sad and unfortunate tale. Pac-Man wasn't as popular as it was back in the 80s, but there were still Pac-Man games being released on occasion. Yeah, and heck, people would even laugh at you if you were still playing on Atari back in the 90s, because you're not playing the latest and greatest video game console. So yeah. Pac-Man was a clear sign that, of course, if you went to school every day, you weren't with the times. So yeah, if you want to become a cool kid, you gotta be with the times. But I'm not dissing on anyone who still likes Pac-Man back in the 90s, because it is okay to like Pac-Man. I mean, come on, Pac-Man's cool. And anyone who grew up with Pac-Man is double cool. Yeah, well, the reason why I'm mentioning Pac-Man instead of Mario is because, well, at least Mario went with the times. Mario, of course, went with the times and had a game on the Super Nintendo that was, like, pretty cool, and even bullies would look up to you. And heck, there's even Super Mario 64 that was released back when the Nintendo 64 first came out, and that game was awesome. It was 3D, and 3D was a big thing back in the mid to late 90s. And Super Mario 64 was the game that showed you how 3D platforming games should work. And even bullies would think you're cool if you got Super Mario 64 because it's like the most epic Mario game ever made. Granted, it doesn't have any blood and gore, but it's Mario. It doesn't need any blood and gore. And Mario's... Well, most Mario games are going to be suitable for the kids. Yeah, no violence, just good old-fashioned fun. And that's what Mario games need. That's all what they need. Alright, so the beatdown level for, if you liked Pac-Man back in the 90s, is 13 fists out of 20. Well, it's the devil's number. Yeah, unlike a Mario, Pac-Man never went with the times. It's still stuck in the same old 2D maze. Yes, there was an attempts to make 3D Pac-Man games like Miss Pac-Man's Maze Madness, but that didn't come until the 2000s. Yeah. Alright, so we have one more thing to discuss, and this is also related to video games. And it's also worth discussing. Because while it is a free thing that you can get at school, it's also a thing that you can get bullied at. Let's talk about it. Actually, before we talk about that, let's talk about Furbies. Yeah, I believe Furbies would have also got you bullied in school. If you got one, since, well, they're kind of weird. Yeah, Furbies are popular, but, well, they're also seen as cutesy, and bullies would definitely make fun of you if you even got them at show and tell. So 14 fists out of 20. And also I would like to talk about, say, Barney the dinosaur. Yeah, if you were still into Barney the dinosaur back in the 90s, which you haven't already outgrown it like most kids, then you would definitely get bullied. Yeah, 19 fists out of 20 for that one. Alright, let's move on to Lightspan Adventures. Alright, so yeah. Lightspan Adventures. This is the kind of stuff that would get you bullied in school, despite the fact that you would get it as a freebie in school. Alright, so you're in school, okay? You go to school. You just stepped out of the school bus. You entered the school doors. Then you went into the classroom and you found out by the teacher that you were getting a free PlayStation. It was awesome. But then you're presented to it and just happens to be edutainment. Lightspan Adventures. And of course, when you even showed the games to the class and everyone in the class, or when you even brought it home to play for yourself and even play the games like Math on the Move, you would get bullied. Every kid in school would laugh at you because instead of like Time Crisis, Dino Crisis and one of the Jurassic Park games, you're playing Math on the Move. Yeah, you see, the nerd wasn't right about, well, you getting bullied if you even play one of the Lightspan Adventures games. You would most definitely get bullied if you did play it back in the day. Yeah, just imagine getting a free PlayStation only to find edutainment. Yeah, let me explain it like this. Imagine if you got yourself a free Lego set. You got yourself a free Lego set in school, and you wanted it because it was so cool. You got free Lego sets, but then you found out that it wasn't a very good Lego set. That it was just the Agents set with Dr. Disaster, the exclusive set. Yeah. Or, let me explain it like this. Imagine if you got yourself a free Lego set from the Star Wars convention, but you opened it up, but you saw it and you found out that it was the Battle on Hoth Ultimate Collector set, and you get disappointed and you cry. Yeah, that's what getting Lightspan Adventures is like. Getting that free Lego set, only to find out that it's not very good. Yeah, you knew you wanted your time back. Yeah, everyone except for the teacher would make fun of you in school. Because you were playing PlayStation games, but you weren't playing cool PlayStation games. Yeah. The PlayStation itself doesn't get you bullied in school. In fact, it will make you a cool kid. And when you talk to the kids about getting Crash Bandicoots or even Final Fantasy VII, which hasn't aged well, in my opinion, or if you got like the PlayStation version of Doom, then everyone would have clambered over to talk to you. And even the bullies would want to play some Doom on the PlayStation. So yeah, the PlayStation, if done right, would be a tool to get you lots of likes in school. It rhymes, by the way. But this is not the case with Lightspan Adventures. These are games that you would get free in school, but you'd probably wish you would pawn them off, though, since they're edutainments, and any edutainment games on home consoles suck. Yeah. Even Mario's Missing on NES and Super NES sucks. Edutainment games work best on computers. Why do companies make edutainment games for home consoles? It just doesn't make sense. It's like trying to wash a table with a squeegee. It doesn't work. Yeah, 20 fists out of 20. Whoa, man, that is really, really bad. 20 fists out of 20. That's like a whole week's worth of bad days. Every kid would make fun of you. I don't believe it. That's like the highest score there. Yeah, so I had fun making this video and telling you which things you would most definitely get bullied at, which things in the 90s. It's definitely refreshing from doing War Thunder related content, and of course I'm going to be focusing on WarioWare related content because I just made an announcement that there's going to be a new WarioWare game coming out on the Switch, and I'm going to be making some news related to that game and the long-awaited Game of Wario game, so stay tuned for that. Alright? For now, see you in the next video. Peace